A lot of people told us like, this is impossible, you can't do this kind of stuff, because these are like subprime users, right? And we proved it by, building an AI-based solution where we monitor what exactly the paycheck is going to be that's going to hit their bank account. And, we have this open banking API connection, and they can withdraw anytime. They work one day, cash out one day of work. We hit $4 billion in transaction volume. We 6x'd the number of depositors on the service.
I want to start with a massive GM and welcome to SolanaFloor. We're here in Crossroads 2025 in Istanbul, and we're talking today with Erbil, the man of the hour in PayFi. He's just finished a few funding rounds, very, very impressive figures. And this is going to be episode 1 of about 4 or 5 conversations about PayFi that you absolutely can't miss if you're trying to understand where money is flowing in the Solana ecosystem. So Erbil, thank you very much for making time to talk to us today.
Thank you, Jack.
So I believe this is your hometown, is that correct? You're from Istanbul originally?
This is where I was born, yes.
And you lived here for a while before moving to the US and building some payment systems?
Exactly. I lived here up until I was 20 years old. In college, I studied computer science, and then I moved to Silicon Valley, California. And life took me to building payment financing fintech with my Huma co-founders. And then from there, we spinned off Huma Finance and building it all on chain.
We're going to dive into Huma in a second and where you think PayFi on Solana is generally moving. But before we get there, I want you to sort of explain to me again what happened in your life over the last sort of 5 to 10 years that made you think PayFi innovations are the way to go. So you explained that you were building a different service and you found instant product market fit. So if you could sort of run through that again, because I think it really touches the heart of why we need to build better payment systems, why money needs to move faster, and also why Solana is the right place to do that.
Great question. So first of all of the Huma co-founders were building something called Earnin, which we call the pioneer in payment financing, much more in a fintech scale and fintech shape. And in the US, there are about half the population that lives paycheck to paycheck. These people have no way to access any kind of credit. And what happens is they don't have savings. Anytime a bill comes in, a bit too early, bigger than what they expect, they're under debt. Or they need to overdraft from their bank accounts, and the banks charge them, $30, $40 every single time they overdraft. So this vicious cycle that they cannot get out of is also abused by, the predatory lending services. And we said, okay, why do you need to, do this while you can actually give them an advance from their paycheck that's coming maybe 2 weeks late, 4 weeks late, whatever that might be. And a lot of people told us like, this is impossible, you can't do this kind of stuff, because these are like subprime users, right? Not credit worthy. But if you're only giving them an advance from the paycheck that's already coming, then there's basically close to zero risk. And we proved it by building an AI-based solution where we monitor what exactly the paycheck is going to be that's going to hit their bank account. And we have this open banking API connection, and they can withdraw anytime. They work one day, cash out one day of work. You worked 1 week, cash out 1 week of work. And that system just grew so wildly, to tens of millions of Americans start using it immediately. COVID hit, right? So it became an even bigger phenomenon because it was just like a financial savior. And it all happened so quickly. We did more than $10 billion, I think, last year of, this kind of advanced transactions. And while doing that, we realized that the biggest bottleneck to growing this further is the rails themselves, is the financial institutions that we have to work with, the banks, the APIs. Like, you need to send a freaking FTP file to the bank to settle this kind of like stuff. And there's always like broken things happening. You don't know where the money is lost. You push, some money to the card, it gets lost. You go to the card processor, they have no clue where the money is. It's just like so much that you need to deal with. And, we try to build like more innovative products. And we always got blocked by, the quote unquote traditional payment partners telling
the powers that be were in the way.
Exactly. Yeah. And we got like so sick of like, hearing you can't build this, you can't build that, and just like seeing how the systems are inept, to be able to grow this further, and realize the only way to build this globally as an infrastructure is to replace the whole system. So we decided to, build the first version of Huma right there.
And then PayFi seemed like the right thing to do. So let's talk about the right place to do it. And maybe let's tie it into the Solana ecosystem. If we're trying to move money from point A to point B, and we're trying to do it fast and cheap and efficiently, and we're trying to solve real problems for real people, as you discovered is, the right thing to do. Why Solana?
I think the problem statement is very important to understand very well, right? So if you're trying to move money from place A to place B, today you do it, let's say, through Swift, right? You're trying to move money across the borders. What happens is Swift only sends an information from your bank to the other bank using other banks in between that a money is coming. But the banks still need to fund, they need to have the liquidity to make sure that the money is accessible to whoever you're sending the money to. And if you think how that can be replaced, you need basically a transaction layer, right? And the transaction layer needs to operate accurately, very fast, and very cheap, especially if you want to replace the Visas of the world or the other large scale systems of the world. And it's very clear that very, very few chains can actually operate at that level of efficiency, finality, and also cost effectively. And then you also need this liquidity replaced, because if you don't have banks to provide the liquidity, how do you settle these funds? So you need a chain that has wide and deep range of stablecoin liquidity solutions. And very few, again, other than the Ethereum mainnet and Solana, has this kind of deep stablecoin liquidity. And then on top of it, you need applications to be able to tap into it quickly and build easily. And even though we started on the EVM side, we realized quickly that it's becoming more and more fragmented in terms of stablecoin liquidity, in terms of the services, in terms of how you need to build that. And Solana just made a lot of sense because so many more payment use cases were being built on Solana because of their Solana Pay focus, and the stablecoin liquidity was just growing so rapidly. And we made a bet that Huma 2.0 should launch on Solana, and we're so happy that we did that because literally 2 weeks after we launched Huma 2.0 on Solana, we hit $4 billion in transaction volume.
Wow.
We 6x'd the number of depositors on the service, active wallets on the service, 6x in just 2 weeks. That's 6x of what we have done in the past 1.5 years.
That's very, very impressive. Congratulations. And there was also funding, which was very, very impressive. So
Thank you.
let's talk about the numbers, because within the Solana ecosystem, we're overall very, very bullish. We're bullish. Loads of things. Some things don't work out. But I get the feeling with PayFi that it's sort of a universally accepted fact that we are all bullish on PayFi, because we believe in the idea that money should be able to go from point A to point B cheap and fast. And, disintermediation is also something that we care about. So how much funding are we talking about here, and who's as bullish as they are?
Huma raised total of more than $46 million. And to be honest, I don't think that's an important part of what we do. We have banks who put money because they actually want to replace their own systems. And these are visionary banks. And one of them is actually the oldest bank in Turkey. We have large foundations, who have this problem and who's trying to solve for themselves this kind of global payment solution systems. We also have, people who understand that we cannot stay in, a narrative that doesn't say lead us to any real world impact, right? So we have a lot of investors who really believe that, this is one way that crypto can touch every single person, because we can be the backend for every single card transaction in the world.
That's a very, very interesting point, because when we talk about money moving from point A to point B, it's not just about remittances, right? It's not just about me sending money to my cousin or my family in a different country. It's also about institutions being able to move large volumes of money rapidly.
Right.
So talk to me about the institutional side of it as well. PayFi isn't just about individual to individual transactions, right? It's something that can really reform the sort of global financial landscape.
100%. So let me tell you about 2 use cases, and these are both real use cases. One of them involves the largest marketplace in the world, Amazon. Amazon has a massive problem. They move $1 trillion a year. People in the US, in Europe, they are the buyers. They buy goods, but the sellers are mostly in Asia. So Amazon needs to take all of this money and move it to Asia as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible, as efficiently as possible. And then to do this for $1 trillion a year, again and again and again. Today, they have to go from a US bank to a UK bank using regular wire Swift. From a UK bank, they need to make sure that they are using FX exchange transactions to get the right amount of right fiat and then push that money to a Hong Kong bank or another regional bank. From Hong Kong, because UK, Hong Kong rails are very established, they need to go into other distribution providers and payment providers or regional banks again to finally get to suppliers, and that takes many days, super costly, very ineffective, and a lot of times money gets stuck. The easy solution for them to just utilize the PayFi network, press a button in the US, convert that capital instantly to stable coins, and then the money can settle immediately in whichever institution you want.
Without intermediaries.
Without intermediaries, right? Because institutions are starting to accept stable coins. And then the supplier, the manufacturer, can access it as if they're accessing their regular accounts.
Oh. So on average, I heard a statistic not too long ago that if you're trying to move money from North America to parts of Asia, it can touch up to 12 intermediaries. And I imagine there's a percentage cut on each of these intermediaries as well. If you're trying to move over $1 trillion or close to $1 trillion and you're paying a percentage, that intermediation fee is astronomically high.
Yes.
So I would imagine Amazon is also quite bullish on PayFi.
It is, yes. And this is one of the pilots that we're so excited about, because we see how obvious the benefits are to companies like Amazon. And as soon as the pilot proves itself, it's going to scale very quickly. The second use case is, let's talk simply about the largest card network, Visa. Visa has a massive problem as well. When you make payments, especially more true in emerging markets, when you make payments and you swipe that card, first of all, a lot of merchants hate getting paid with cards because they're not so concerned about the commission fees. Sometimes that's the problem. They're more concerned about not being able to access those funds immediately, especially if you're like a very slow margin business and you need to constantly buy the inventory to replace your inventory, which is majority of the merchants right in the world, especially small to mid-sized merchants. It's actually a deadly thing to accept card payments because it might take forever for you to actually see that money in your account, right? You need to have an origination institution who needs to send the money first to the Visa network. That takes some time. From the Visa network, that needs to be sent to what you call the acquiring institution. That takes some time. And the acquiring institution needs to eventually make those, funds available to you in your merchant, account. And that can be replaced with an instant settlement. When you swipe the card, instead of Visa going to the, whatever the origination bank institution, they can just go to the PayFi network, ask a very simple question. Are these funds available to settle with this merchant? And the network say yes. You can just settle right there immediately.
So when we talk about these two use cases, at least for me, the original sort of conclusion or the voice in my head says, yeah, but this is so obvious, right? Why didn't the institutions that already move trillions of dollars around the world and take these huge fees, they obviously have a lot of capital, why didn't they innovate? Why is it up to us to innovate, right? It's such an obvious solution. So yeah, why wasn't this already done?
I don't think this is about a specific institution. There's this book I love called The Innovator's Dilemma. It's just in general very hard for large institutions to innovate, especially in areas that cannibalizes their existing business, because you're not built for that as an institution. You don't have a mandate to cannibalize yourself, even though you see it so obviously. And a lot of times, even when you want to do it, you just cannot do it, right? As I was working at Facebook back in the days, we were not a dinosaur, but we were already a large company. And it was so obvious, like WhatsApp was a, massively successful product. Instagram was doing an amazing job with photo sharing. Snap was doing an amazing job with this, selfies and the, like instant sharing use cases. And we tried so hard to like really innovate and build out. It just didn't happen, right? So hard for large institutions to find product market fit again in a complete new area where they haven't hired the people for that, right? They haven't built operations for it. They haven't built the governance strategy models for that. So they need these innovators to come and basically save them, because what they would, do with 1,000 people, it would take them probably 10 years, can be done in, a matter of months, by just depending on a, small team that knows what they're doing and just focus on that.
Also, as you said, without cannibalizing your core business, which is very, very important as well. And speaking of the core business, so PayFi, when we think about PayFi, it's about moving money from point A to point B. But another thing that people think about when Huma comes to mind or is the topic of discussion is the yield. Yield that you guys offer is very, very attractive as well. So I want to talk about yield. I want to talk about the numbers. But how do you think of yield versus moving money around in terms of core business, side business? And what makes Huma as attractive as it is to people? Is it the yield?
It's mostly the yield, I'll be honest. And it's by design. It's by design because when we thought, okay, how do you really grow this, in a healthy way? You realize the biggest advantage the banks have is their liquidity. And they actually use your money, Jack, because you have a bank deposit, you open a checking account and you put money in there. The bank gives you nothing in return for doing that, but they use that money to basically, settle transactions, make investments, and they make a shit ton of money. I just look at banks' balance sheets and like how much money they're making. They make a lot, but they don't return anything. And we said if we flip this system and give back vast majority of what the network is making, let aside the costs, back to people in the form of yield and make this yield composable so that, that yield can be accessed from anywhere in DeFi that can solve the supply problem. And it turned out to be the case that that's true. And that's what made, also PayFi so attractive because, we don't help people to send money from US to Mexico individually, right? This is a solution for mostly institutions and the payment rails. But if you can participate in making this run and provide liquidity, and if you benefit from getting the liquidity back with the yield, that's so attractive because you can provide double-digit yield regardless of the market conditions.
So where does that double-digit yield come from then, concretely?
So if you think about like Swift and how much it costs, if you think about card transactions, how much they cost, every single time you're actually paying, let's say, 4 to 6% using these traditional solutions. And that 4 to 6% is not annualized, it's per transaction. If you analyze it, it's hundreds of percent yield you're making for somebody else. For us, we're just charging 6 to 10 basis points a day, every institution that uses this liquidity. And the 6 to 10 basis points a day over the course of, business days over a year easily makes double-digit yield. And when you take the costs out and everything else out, you're still left with double-digit yield. As long as you have these institutions moving money around and, they're so happy to pay you 6 to 10 basis points versus, paying so much more to run the operations themselves, you just, build this yield up because you can just turn around the money very, very quickly. And that yield goes mostly back to the depositors and users.
That makes a lot of sense. So I think it's safe to say that institutions are not going to stop moving money around anytime soon, regardless of macro conditions. That's going to be the case for a long, long time.
That would be the end of the world economy.
Right? Yeah. I'm very bullish PayFi. I want to say, thank you for explaining it to me because in my mind, moving money around seems like an easy fix. But obviously, you've got to make it attractive to people by offering yield as well. You're going to be having some more conversations with people that are leading this PayFi charge. What excites you the most? What type of innovation are you watching most closely within the PayFi space on Solana at the moment?
Oh man, there's actually so many. I'm going to be honest that when we started the PayFi network and decided to build this on Solana, I wasn't sure like how many different use cases we would see. Some people were talking about buy now, pay never. Just keep some yield-bearing stable coins and then use the yield-bearing component to basically fund and finance the stuff that you're paying for. Lily is a big fan of this use case. I'm personally much more bullish about just replacing everyday things that we've been using with things that actually work better, right? So that's something I'm very bullish about. So KAST, we're going to talk about why that card is actually massively better.
Well, I've used it even in rural Turkey, by the way. If anyone is watching, rural Turkey is, it's known for being difficult to spend your money.
That's right.
If you don't have the right amount of cash, they might not even give you change. They'll give you sweets or something. But KAST works even in rural Turkey. So I'm excited for that conversation that you're going to have with KAST. I'm also under the impression that you're going to be talking on stage at Crossroads about stablecoin adoption.
That's right.
How to grow stablecoin adoption. That seems to be quite exciting as well. And we are running low on time. I don't want to keep you any longer. Just for the audience and for me to follow along, you're going to be recording these conversations about PayFi innovation and the future of PayFi on Solana over the next coming days. And we'll be able to watch this, I think, online in the coming weeks. Is that correct?
That's correct. Our goal is to just make sure that, we're covering all the exciting use cases and hear from the builders themselves why they're bullish and where it's all taking us to.
Perfect. And for anyone interested, you can find that on SolanaFloor. You can find it on Huma's YouTube channel on X as well. Erbil, thank you so much for making time to talk to us. I really appreciate it. And we'll be watching your live stream on stage as well.
Thank you, Jack.